Hang on. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I'll have to fix that intro because it played full screen last time. I must have grabbed the wrong one. Anyways, you are listening live to the Angel Rock on UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. You can listen to us on 105.3 FM out of Mississippi and 107.7 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Who's not playing nice already? I'm telling you, these guys, we're having fun producing tonight. So hopefully you can see us on Roku, guys. This show's called, like I said, The Angel Rock. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. I am a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher, and mentor, if my mouth will work. I'm an animal communicator, well-versed in near-death experiences, having had one myself as a toddler, and I've studied them professionally and personally for over 40 years. I am also extremely well-versed in the paranormal. I always say we didn't go looking for it. It found us. We've shared our story on the Travel Channel's Paranormal Survivor in season 4, episode 9, called Demonic Hauntings. And I think I said this. If you guys think I'm being distracted here, I got all these things flashing at me as I was talking, so I apologize. I think I added 2. I'm working on animal communication. We have a great guest. Most of you, I don't think, have met her because she came on right when the show was new, almost well over 5 years ago, I think. So I'm going to get to her bio in just a minute. We always get the housekeeping out of the way. You got Z-Sun Dragon, or Kevin, his muggle name as we call it. He says, hi, Lorilei. Hi, Susan. Heidi Gold is here. She says, hello. So what else do I want to tell you? Speaking of Roku, hopefully it's going to play nice. So far, it's not, but we shall see, because we have a TV channel for the network over there. How you can find it is you're going to go to the channel store. You're going to type in UFO space P as in paranormal. There's a drop down list, and we're about the 3rd or 4th one down, and you're looking for UFO space paranormal and United Public Radio, and you can watch us on TV. Now, if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell all your friends and family. There really is something for everyone on this network. I think we're almost up to 40 live hosts on the network, and it's not all UFO and paranormal. We have people talking about all different types of topics. We're always adding new hosts with great shows. And when we're not streaming live, the archive server kicks into the last 25 plus years the network's been around, and randomly puts up shows from present shows, past shows. So we actually virtually are streaming live 24 hours a day. 80% of our audience is audio only. So if you want to join in the conversation, because if you've been to the Angel Rock before, or my second show on Thursday night I do with my very good friend and amazing Angel Channel and medium David Hansel, The Thing at the Foot of the Bed. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on UPRN. Both of these shows are very audience participative, and we'd love to have you join the conversation. So if you can't see the video, you won't be able to comment. So how you can join in and comment is you can head over to my Facebook profile. It's public, so you don't have to send me a friend request. It's under Lorilei Potvin. We're streaming on the network's YouTube channel, which is UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. I had to think because we have a secondary channel, but we're not streaming on that one tonight. And we're on my YouTube channel, which is the Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin. We are streaming on the UPRN Twitch page, so please feel free to join in and join the conversation. We're streaming on the Angel Rock. Sometimes they go 2 hours, sometimes they don't. But you guys, your comments are separate, so I got to flip back and forth between the pages to see it, and I will try and include you. Or just come and head over to YouTube. It's usually the easiest. We're also streaming under Mystique 1508. I always say it's not a stripper name, promise. That's my Rumble channel, and it's actually my old username. It's from X-Men, believe it or not. We're gonna try TikTok again in a few minutes. We'll see how that goes. Cross your fingers for us. And let's see. I think I remembered everything here. Thankfully, I'm going to read Susan's bio here. So give me a sec. I got to go all the way to the bottom. I'm all set here if it wants to behave itself with me. Okay, so Susan Plunket is a writer and psychologist in private practice in New York City. She received her doctorate at the New School for Social Research in 1989. Her first book, When Every Breath Becomes a Prayer, reflects her interest in Jungian dream analysis and people who have experienced a numinous as a result of emotional pain. She believes that we are part of one vast web of consciousness, and I agree. Her books, Mission from Venus and The Wanderers on Earth, I think that's the one you came on my show with, The Wanderers on Earth, reflect this belief as they explore the fantasy worlds of the fifth and sixth dimensions. In her latest book, what we're going to be talking about, Paranormal Perspectives, a Jungian, I can never say that word properly, understanding. Thanks for holding it up, Susan. A Jungian understanding of transcendent experiences. She shares her own paranormal experiences. Welcome, Susan. I'm so glad to have you back here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to play with TikTok. So,
good. That'll be fun.
Yes, I am. Well, I'm talking. Well, we'll say hi to everybody too. We got a few people here. Like I said, we got Heidi, we got Kevin. I don't know. Usually it takes people a few minutes. Sometimes we start a little bit after 10 after. So I don't, you know what I always say? How did you start writing all these books? Because psychology and the paranormal, not that all your books are about paranormal, but they've got.
Oh, they kind of are.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I would have probably never started writing. But I was talking to an intuitive, Cindy Dale.
Oh, I love Cindy Dale's work.
Yeah. I was on the phone with her about 10 years ago, or maybe more. It was 2012, however many years ago that was, talking about something else. And she said, it's below zero in Minnesota. And I'm burning up because they're telling me that, yes, it's fine. Be a psychologist if that's what you want. But you were born to be a writer. And you're not writing, and they just really want me to tell you that. And I was like, oh no, I can't do that. It's enough being a psychologist. And I resisted it, but she had just plugged it into my mind. And then my own guides started in on me about do it. And I got a message from my father, who's on the other side. Just do it. So finally I started doing it. And that's how I started writing. But this particular book, I would have never written. This is my fourth book. This book was created by Gavin.
You got to tell people who Gavin is, because a lot of people don't know.
Gavin is a major mover at the publishing company Collective Inc. And he's the head of marketing, but he's also a great writer. And has had many paranormal experiences. And he said, we should have a series called My Paranormal Life, where I get 5 or 6 authors to each write the story of all their paranormal experiences. And you can see it. What he calls the series is at the top, Paranormal Perspectives. It's the perspective of, right now there are 5 authors, including Gavin.
Okay, who else? Because Gavin sends me the most incredible people, and I always give him a shout out. So, who else has joined you? Do you know?
Gavin, and then there's only 2 books out so far. Mine is the first one out.
Okay.
The second one out is One Big Box of Paranormal Tricks by John Fraser.
I was just talking to him. I'm trying to get him on. I think he's going to.
Oh, he would probably love to come on. His book just mine came out October 1st. His came out October 31st for Halloween.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Gavin's will come out in the spring. Then there's one I believe about ghost hunting, and another one about life after death. But I'm not sure of all the 5 yet. But Gavin will be sending all 5 of his little group.
Oh, he probably will. I'm booking into March right now. Wow. And I'm very happy about that. But in a way, because I have my finger kind of in a whole bunch of different areas and topics, there's a few people that I'd love to have on kind of like while the topic is hot sort of thing. And I'm talking about, I do follow true crime, especially when it comes to, giving people who have been the victim of something like that a voice, or being able to help. Say there was a lost person that people are searching for and stuff. But, by the time I book them in March, I certainly would hope somebody would have an answer by then. So, yeah. Great. So as soon as I saw your name, I went, oh, yep, I don't need to see anything. Yep, we're having season 1.
How wonderful. Anyway, so Gavin gets all the credit for this book because he said, write about all your paranormal experiences. So I sat down with the paper and I started listing, and I came up with 19 paranormal experiences. I would have never thought that I had that many in my life. And after I gave the book into the company, I thought of 2 more, but I was too late because it was already set. But anyway, starting before I was born, when I was deciding to incarnate with a twin who didn't come.
Ooh, okay.
She stayed back. But then a few years later, when I was a toddler, she became my imaginary friend, Sophie.
Let's talk about that then. But
Yeah.
before we go to the imaginary friend, most people I know, I would think would know, but they may not, depending on where they're listening from, because Jungian is from
Oh,
Carl
right.
Jung. So why
Right.
do you look at it from that perspective? I wanted to ask you that for people that
Oh,
are
yes.
working
Thank
up
you
with
for
that.
that question. Because I'm a psychologist, and the
Mhm,
way that I work
mhm,
is with Carl Jung's principles,
mhm,
um, which is basically the most important thing for him was to integrate your unconscious,
mhm.
your intuition, your unconscious, your dreams, your visions with your consciousness. It's
Okay.
a little different from
Mhm.
mainstream psychology. Carl Jung he hated to be called a mystic, but he was a mystic. I think he hated it because Freud called him a mystic after
Yeah, well,
their
that would have certainly created problems.
after their bromance ended.
Mhm,
Um, then Freud was not happy about that.
mhm,
So he called him a mystic, but in fact, he was a mystic. He regularly talked to invisible beings.
mhm.
He created an exercise so that we can all talk to our own invisible beings, our own inner aspects, all the people in our own unconscious and the collective unconscious. He just works for me. I
So
spend my
what would be is it a long process or a quick trick that people could sort of, not a trick, a technique that people could look into to utilize for themselves?
You mean how to contact their inner world? The best
Yeah.
way is dreams,
Okay.
and everyone dreams 5 or 6 dreams a night.
At least, yeah.
But we don't remember them unless we practice, unless we suggest before we fall asleep, going into that liminal space, those theta waves as you drift off. I'd like the gift of a dream, dear unconscious, and I'd like to remember it. That is the best way to see the people in your inner world, the beings in your inner world. But if you want to do it when you're awake, yeah, well, you can sit in a chair, but I lie down on my back. I
Right.
just lie down on my back, breathe, just put myself in a light trance through breathing, just shutting out the visual world, because
Right.
the visual world anchors us in this dimension,
Yeah.
but all the other dimensions are right here, but
Thank
we
you.
block them out. We block them out because our design, our physical design, our eyes, our hearing, and everything keeps us focused only in this reality. But there are many realities all against this, and every reality is in the one mind. So what happens when you die? Nothing. You never left the field.
Thank
All
you.
this
Thank you for saying that.
all this is a simulation for
Mhm.
us to have experiences.
I call it a school. It's a
It's
school, and we create like, and where people get into issues with this, and I'm sure you might even see it in your own work. Not that I would ask anything personal, but I know that being a nurse myself. But what people don't realize that once you start to dig into these more deeper core principles, that we actually create the world that we're in. And the easiest way to explain it to people, I say, is we're like a radio antenna, if you will, or a radio. And the frequency that we're putting out there is what we pull into us. So if we're able to change that frequency or raise it, we start having more positive, and we
Yes.
start to realize that's how we can manifest what we want. But people get into issues, especially if they've had a very difficult and tough life, and they hear this. I always say hearing it with their human ears, thinking that the blame is being put on them because you're having these experiences, rather than looking at it from, what can I learn from this? What can I take from this and help move forward in life? Mm-hmm.
I believe exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we can remember that we're all in the one consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and our true essence is consciousness. Our body is this temporary thing we're having for this life, but simultaneously, we're having many other experiences, maybe in different bodies, maybe just pure energy.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us who are having this earth experience, we are working below the level of consciousness, below the personal unconscious, down in the collective unconscious, to keep this whole thing here so that we can experience it. We project it and then we experience it, and we're designed with these eyes, ears, everything to experience our projection.
Mm-hmm.
So we can change it if
Yes.
we believe that we can. But, you
Mm-hmm.
know, everything we learn from when we're first babies and toddlers is acclimating us to this simulation. And we absolutely perceive it as real and solid,
Mm-hmm.
like solid hand. But actually, even physics tells us we're mostly empty space. The computer's mostly empty space. The table's mostly empty
Look
space.
who's here. He never pops in. Hi,
Hi,
Gavin.
Karen. We were just talking about you.
Yeah, were your ears burning? We were just talking about
He's so
you.
clever. How does he know how to do that? He's so clever.
Just amazing. I had him on and he had all kinds. He's over in Wales, you guys. This is a gentleman in the chat on Facebook who sends, and Gavin, I shout you out many times, sends me the most fantastic authors. Susan's been on before. We've been having fun talking about this. And what I wanted to add to what you said, I agree 100%. And as I understand it as a collective, we have agreed that the things that we perceive to be solid as a collective, because if you think
Yes.
about it, right, if we weren't all joined it via one consciousness, imagine what each person would design and create. And if you saw some people seeing things as completely, I can put my hand through a wall, through a door, or I'm not solid, I'm just lots of empty space. Can you imagine? There would be no order, right? So we've all agreed to many of these
Well,
things.
we're having this experience, and many people are afraid to incarnate. That's what happened with my twin, where
Well, I'm so glad I was going to bring it back to that. So please continue.
where I start the book. We're in the before. We're in the life between life space.
Mm-hmm.
We've decided to incarnate as twins. We're energy. We're just pure energy at that point. And we're going back and forth between the life between life space and the mother's body,
Okay.
creating.
I'm so glad you said that, because Spirit shared that with me, and people say, because that's a big question. When does a baby become a baby? Is it in the womb and the consciousness and what? But we're still a free, and even as a newborn, I think we are. I'm getting ahead of myself, but go ahead. So you guys were
Up until the way I've understood it, up until you're on Earth for 2 years, you have the free will to totally leave. And maybe that's what a lot of crib vets are, because what happened was, and I knew this from my mother, that she was having twins, but then she lost one twin. She didn't lose her. Sophie didn't want to come. She was afraid. She said, I know like great masters who fear to take on flesh over their light. And also they lost my heartbeat in the 8th month.
Oh my goodness.
Because I didn't want to come without her. But then I did come. So then I was born, and like all babies, I couldn't see, because, they can see maybe the mother's face. We have to learn to use the mechanism. We don't know how to use our eyes and ears. We don't know how to operate this little body we're in. It's terrifying. And but as I got old enough to walk and talk, then Sophie came as an imaginary friend. And I talk about the things she tells me, reminds me. And this is where the Jungian part comes in. Like she says, don't forget that you are not just your body. Don't forget that you have an eternal self. You have your number 1 and your number 2. Those were Jung's first conceptions when he was a child. He would talk about his number one self and his number two self.
Okay.
Later, he called them the ego and the self, capital S, the S being his eternal being that always was and always will be, and that knows it didn't leave the field, that we're all in the field.
Mm-hmm.
But we experience life on earth as separation so that we can have, as you call it, our earth school lessons, so we can learn to love, even though we've been separated out. And we can feel very scared. I think I was terrified as a baby and a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And Sophie, being my imaginary friend, really helped me.
You know what you've done for me by explaining this to me or sharing this? And I've never shared this on air before, and I never hide things. I'm very honest. I was always told I'd never have children. So I always say I won the lottery twice having two boys. They're all grown-ups now, but with my eldest, I was on fertility drugs and I was going for ultrasound. And there were two eggs. I know there was two eggs. And I know practically the minute I conceived. And then like within a day, I was sicker than a dog. I had a nursing student in the car. I was able, when I hadn't hurt my back and I was driving down the highway, I said, oh my God, I think I'm going to pull over. I'm going to be sick. I knew by 18th day of pregnancy, I said, either I'm dying or I'm pregnant. I am. I went for the blood test and it was still too early. They couldn't tell. But the whole point is what you just shared. I never did have twins. I had a very difficult pregnancy with both kids, but my eldest, I always say that he had the terrible twos the first 2 years of his life. I could not put him down. I had to carry him everywhere or he would scream and cry. He would not go to anybody. You just explained so much. I'm covered in goosebumps. You just explained so much, because what if there was supposed to be that twin that did not come and he was terrified?
Heartbroken and terrified.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because, babies are not ignorant.
No.
They have consciousness. They just don't know how to use the body yet, but they have a high consciousness.
And so connected to if you will, the one
consciousness connected to the other side. And because for the first 7 years of life, children are constantly just in theta because they have so much to learn. That's what healers used to heal. Is theta wave.
And do remote viewing, because I've taken remote courses, and what you do is the one gentleman, he just passed away, Dr. Chuck Kennedy, and I just loved him. And I'd taken his course because he amalgamated a bunch of remote viewing techniques and put them together. But the first thing to prepare yourself was to go into a theta wave meditation with the type of binaural beats and stuff that he had, because it's an incredible state of mind, if you will, brainwave, for you to access this type of work, right?
And we learned so much in that first 7 years. When my sister, who's now dead, my younger sister, was 6 years old, she reminded me of something I had known when I was littler. I mean, she was 6, I was 11, but we would do remote viewing together. We lived by the Ashokan Reservoir, which feeds New York City. We lived up in the country, and we would go out over the reservoir at night. Our consciousness, our bodies were in our twin beds, but we would be out there, and we saw cigar-shaped and weird-shaped flying vehicles. And her name was Anne, and I said, how did we get here? She said, you don't will yourself, you just imagine it. And your consciousness goes wherever you imagine. And I had forgotten that. I had known that. But you forget it when you get out of constant theta. But she was still always in theta because she was younger. And it was amazing to have her keep me closer to that longer than I would have. And
as a reminder.
And my mother could not stand it. Like she would say, stop talking nonsense. She would say to my father, these kids, they have to go to school or people are going to think they're crazy. And my father, to his credit, said, I had remote viewing as a child. That's all it is. Don't worry about it. Everyone can do it. And
Yeah.
they can do it even as adults. He said, I lost it after childhood.
Many of us do, because
You go
well-meaning
out of favor.
parents, well-meaning parents start to tell your child, you're getting a little old for that. You
Yeah.
know, that's in your imagination. And I
You
wanted
get
to go back to
none of
your.
it.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Susan. I was going to go back to something. Go ahead.
I was just saying, we get the teachers, the caregivers, the parents. They want you to get in line a little bit, and
Conform.
cope with this world.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back to the imaginary friend, because I think this is an important topic, with the fact that I find parents that are bringing children into the world now, it's almost like we're bringing in a newer breed of child, if you will, a new model, an upgraded model. And parents are a little more open-minded to
Yes.
what's happening. But I do work with people within the paranormal that need help. And, the first thing, they'll be hearing kind of these things from their children, sort of what I'm so grateful that you've shared. How do I support them? What do I do to help? But especially if it's a paranormal situation. And one of the first questions I ask people, I have a questionnaire. Do you have small children or animals around you? And if you do, how are they acting? What are they telling you? What are you seeing by their behavior? And then when the topic of the imaginary friend comes up, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I believe you're going to say it's very real, right? But what else can you add to that? Mm-hmm.
It's totally real. Most parents do accept it, even like straighter parents,
Mm-hmm.
because some kids have more than one imaginary friend.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them have a couple of. I only had Sophie, but they have more than one, and they are souls. These imaginary friends are souls that are close to the child and trying to help the child adjust. And often they're discovered because the child will say, don't sit on my friend, or no, bring the boat back to the pier because you left him on the pier. And the parents have to row the boat back and get the imaginary
But
friend.
what about, this is where I've seen it, not all the time, but say you have earthbound spirits that have chosen, for whatever reason, with their free will, to stay earthbound, rather than, as you called it, going to the in-between. Some people call it heaven, source, whatever it may be. Have you ever encountered that? Because I have, and that's why I always encourage parents to get as much detail from your child, even if they can draw it. And I'm not saying every imaginary friend is evil. It's not. Most of them are 90%. I think this experience.
Most of them are very. I think that the children's imaginary friends, I've never encountered one that wasn't positive. The earthbound soul that I've encountered in my practice as a psychologist, attached. One man came in with one attached. They can be persuaded to cross over, because they're not growing, staying attached to another consciousness.
Absolutely.
And they can cause that consciousness to have their addictions or their issues. So I only personally had this one experience, and we did help her to leave him and cross over. And there is an old-fashioned book on this, about this doctor that was, his medical students were working with cadavers, and they realized that there were other beings attached to some of these cadavers. And then he started a protocol, because his wife was intuitive. She was psychic. She could talk to them and point them and request that someone come for them and point them in the direction of who was coming to get them. Because always there will be someone to come. I write about that a lot in the trilogy. Not so much, I don't think I write about that in this book. I write about imaginary friends. I write about preparing to be born, a lot about theta waves.
One of the best pieces of advice, one of my friends that's been on here quite a few times, I should have him on. I haven't had him on in a while, Augie Nost. And he suggests, he runs it's called the Mastermind 3 times a week. And they work on consciousness and meditation and, healing and abundance, anything like that, connecting with extraterrestrial in the way of friendly, all kinds of stuff. It's a really, and anybody can join. It's not an elitist type thing for anybody. I think you just have to write the mastermind. I think it's connection@gmail.com. And then they'll send you the link on Sundays. Anyways, he had said that if you run into an earthbound spirit and you're not really sure what you're doing, or you don't know how to help them, try to guide them into calling on someone they love, because
Yes,
we always have somebody that we have loved in our lifetime. He said a mother figure or a mother or somebody,
yes.
call on them to come and
Help them over. Exactly. Because if you die too quickly, like say in an automobile crash or
yeah,
something,
I've
you
seen
don't
it.
know you're dead.
I have seen that, yes.
Because your consciousness, you are your consciousness, and you don't realize that that's your body. Your body could be lying there, but you don't even realize it's you, because you're just in your consciousness and you think you're alive, because you are. You're just not, your body's not alive, but you never die. We never die. And because we're in our consciousness, we cannot know that our body's no longer viable, but we're not dead.
Well, yeah, and I've run into earthbound spirits. This has happened where it's been very quick. Like, and the same thing with my co-host David on Thursday nights. Now we really believe that unless you designed it to be part of your plan being on this planet, I have yet to run into a spirit, nor has David, and I've talked to many mediums that actually experienced what the physical body experienced at the time of passing, say it was tragic. Usually the soul leaves. Like I've never, even David talks about somebody that was their parachute didn't open and he was just enjoying the falling, and they're like, dude, come on, we gotta go. But he said it just felt so free. And of course, for us imagining that as, oh my God, how horrible. Well, the soul's already left the body, right? Because
the soul's not worried. The soul's not worried. And many people, I mean, well, the deaths that I've been through with my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, and some friends, they tell you like, I'm leaving soon, or I'm leaving now. Like my sister just looked right at me and said, I'm going now. And she left.
Or you tell, like, I'm very passionate about palliative care. Before I hurt my back, that was what big part of my work, working out in the community. And you're exactly right. Or we find people that will say, mom, for example, mom, or my sister, my brother, whoever it is, your loved one, saying, it's okay to go. And then you take one breath and they leave. Or the other one, the loved one is staying by the bed and night and day, just a walking zombie, and literally walks out of the room to get a cup of coffee.
That's when it's easier, much easier. But they you kind of know, because like, for example, in the case of my sister, she was saying, who are all these guys in brown hoods? And I said they're monks.
Yes, I knew right away. She said
they're monks. She was like, oh yeah. And dad is with them. Great. But
I'm writing a book about this. I have 3 books. I have the outlines. I've been saying it forever. I need to sit down and finish them. And the third one, I'll be contacting you if you want to add one too, but it's mainly people in the medical profession, nurses, first responders, anybody who's been there or chooses to share. But what it is the incredible, miraculous things that we see at the bedside as we transition out of the physical body, as I call it, going back home. And I've already run across some incredible stories that there's just no way.
You write those up. Your paranormal life. You have to be in Gavin's series.
That's my second book, my paranormal story. My first one, my youngest son has severe autism, and he'll be 27 in March. And this is an incredible, crazy story involving even the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the FDA, like the whole, I couldn't make this. I was literally saying to my partner today of 15 years, I said, the life we have lived, even while we've been together for 15 years, I think most people think we're crazy if we sit down to tell them with this incredible experiences, not all positive, just crazy experiences we've had.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So,
a rich life if you're open to
yeah.
those liminal spaces, those spaces that are bordering on all the other realities. I mean, it's hard because we're so designed, our physical design is to focus here. But if you meditate, if you just close your eyes and dream, you can drop into some of these other realities, because wherever your mind goes, that's where your consciousness is.
And I'm actually setting up my first course. I've been saying forever I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it sometime in the new year, teaching people how to access their abilities. Because I believe as human beings that it's basically been drilled out of us. Like we've had it up to about 2 or 3. And then most of us forget that, you know, we can do these things: telepathy, telekinesis. We can have psychic ability, because I've run into so many people who say, well, I'm not a psychic, I don't really have any abilities, and then they
know a
tell
lot
you
of
something.
stuff.
Yes.
People know. In the old days, when the phone was attached to the wall and it rang, you usually you just
You knew
who was calling, or you get an intuition about something.
Yeah.
But we learn to filter it out. We can bring it back. We can bring our intuition back. It's a great source.
It is. So, and how I've, you know, a lot of people need proof. Even after everything we went through with the paranormal, my partner Dell's he's still a big skeptic. For example, there's a loved one that he's very, very close to, that he just shared with me this week, and I talk to them every day. And I said, well, you know, they hear you. They haven't gone anywhere. The physical body's not there, but they're there. They hear you.
Over there is really right here. It's just like a force field. My father explained that to me after he died, because I said, well, where are you?
Yeah.
And he said, it isn't about space. Everybody's in the same field, but there's like energy, a force field separating, and I have to find a way, a channel through it to communicate with you via mental telepathy.
It's true. And again, there's exercises you can do to work on it. Or I had very interesting, we don't always have these conversations, but my partner Del and I were having them this weekend, and he was talking about, with Julie adding, or we were told it was all in our imagination, as a small child. He had told me this story before, but not quite as in depth. He said he very quickly learned as a 4 or 5-year-old he could see colors around people, and he started to learn with those colors. Auras, but also it even into the chest area as well. And he started to be able
to see the color of the chakras.
Yes. So it wasn't even the chakras. So it was a color system for him that he quickly was able to recognize. Say, if he saw purple, this is what this person really had in the way of intention and energy. And, you know, I think he shared it as a small child and basically was told, like, you're crazy, dude, kind of thing. And so he kept it to himself. He still uses it. And I got to tell you, I've been with him for almost 15 years. He's never been wrong about a person. No, I don't use this system. Doesn't correlate with the chakras, because I work with the chakras, but
it's his system. You know, speaking of exercises, I want to add that at the end of I have 19 chapters. At the end of each chapter, I have a paragraph exercise. Each chapter comes with an exercise. So if I'm talking about remote viewing, I give a little paragraph on how to do that. If I'm talking about listening for angels, I'm giving a paragraph about how to do that. So each paranormal experience in the book comes with just a little exercise at the end, which tells you how to do
that.
Which, you know, one is using the liminal space between sleeping and waking to contact your intuition, because you go into theta in that space. You know how you're laying in bed and you're drifting?
The hypnagogic space, as I call it.
Yeah, the hypnagogic space, right? I call it the liminal in between, but
It's easier to say, and I like it better. It's easier to remember,
yeah,
liminal.
it's just like, you know, in between waking and sleeping, you're laying there drifting and you can get intuitions. Well, you see tons of things because if you're in the dark and your eyes are shut and you're drifting, you're not focused on this reality. So you're starting to see other scenes. Well, you can do it when you're watering the garden. You're holding the hose. I write about one of those here. I was for a short time living in Berkeley, California, and I was watering the garden because everything grows beautifully in Berkeley. And I spaced out, as I often space out. I'm one of those. Um, and suddenly I was in a different century. I was in the UK in front of an old stone mansion, and there was a horse and carriage, and there was a guy helping a woman get out of the carriage. And I swear it was me. She was me. And I was like, oh my God, you space out. If you don't hold to this reality too tightly, you can see all the other realities that you're simultaneously living.
Do you think you were visiting a past life?
Well, yeah, I was visiting another life because I think they're all simultaneous, even if they're a different.
I know, but when you try and explain that to people, right? Like
Yeah,
when you explain that the past, present, and future are all happening at the same time, that time
yeah,
is a man-made thing to kind of help
right.
bring
It's
the
for it's
reality.
the third dimension.
Mhm.
We agree to it because with our apparatus, our heads would explode if
And
we
it does when you start going into dimensions and
if
timelines and
when
time and
everything was happening at one time, our heads would explode.
yeah.
So we line it all up. Oh, that happened in the 17th, 18th, 19th century, 21st century. Okay. But actually, probably in the quantum field, the one mind is only one time.
Mhm.
But in the third dimension, we have time. We have
Yes.
time and we have space,
Mhm.
neither of which is real, according to physics.
I believe it. So Kevin or Z Sun Dragon added that space is where I'll put it back up, where we can receive downloads, also known as messages from guides and spirit. Also, you can get a sense of other realms and past life, or like you said, happening at the same time,
Yeah,
live.
simultaneous lives.
Because I'll tell you, I have been getting so many downloads over the last week. I even literally, I think I've had 5 today, and I never get that. And my sign, left ear, really loud ringing. I usually stop if I can, unless I'm driving. They don't usually do it when I'm driving, but I will stop and kind of lean into it, if you will, breathe, and just be open to whatever's being sent to me. Not like, what are you sending me? What is it? How do I use it? I just open, and when I meant to discover it, I do.
Because
Mhm.
you're fearless. I
Mhm.
think we block out a lot because we're afraid. We
Mhm.
we we don't want to believe what's happening. I
Mhm.
remember, well, now I'm in my 70s, but
No,
when
you're not. Are you? Oh
yeah,
my gosh, you don't look that. You look amazing. Not that 70 is old. I don't mean that, but you look
yeah,
amazing.
no, it is old, but
Not
in my
old. I'm going to be
20s,
60 in August.
well, bless you. Anyway, in one night in my 20s, I was lying in bed with my boyfriend, and there was like I woke up because there was a big light in the room hovering over the radiator, and
Ooh.
it started speaking to me. And it's I visualized it as an angel. And I was like in my head saying, is this angel talking to me? Am I imagining this, or is this angel talking to me?
Yeah.
And it gave me a message about writing, which, I ignored because I ignored many messages.
Mhm.
Because what it said was, you are a scribe. You are a
Oh,
scribe,
cool. I like that.
which is not exactly a writer. I think it's more writing. I don't know what exactly it is. It wasn't a word that was, in my 20s I knew,
Mhm.
but I got it various times, that message. And of course I woke up my boyfriend, and, he's like, you're dreaming. You're
Of course. Yeah.
spacey anyway, but this is a dream. And I was
Mhm.
like, it's not a dream, but okay. And I
Mhm.
wrote it, I lit a candle and wrote it all down in my journal and thought of all things if the angel came back, I would want to ask him or her. But it was just that one message from that particular angel. Although I have had other teachers, disincarnate teachers, often angelic beings. I also write about them in this book for Gavin's series. And that, I would say, if I had to say, aside from my daughter, the biggest blessing of my life were my disincarnate teachers. And the messages they gave me about what's really going on here and how important love is and how important it is to embrace everything you think you don't want, because everything you think you don't want will be good for you, and everything you think you want will bring 1,000 sorrows. So stop judging and just try to look without judging everything. One of my teachers said to me, and I was younger then, I hope I don't do this now, but he said, you know, you're so pretentious. It's like a long-term problem with you. And you should just, you turn down the divine, you turn down God 1,000 times a day. And that's a conservative estimate, because you think he's a little stiff or she's a little frumpy, judging. Everyone is divine. Everyone is God. Every bird, every caterpillar, every human, just open to it. You think you tell me, because I used to tell him, Monka was his name, I want to see God. And you say, you see God 1,000 times a day and you look away. Because every single thing is an expression of source.
But it's so hard to understand that, though, right? Until
it isn't now, but it was then.
Well, it is, and especially developmentally in our 20s or whatever. We're in a different space now than we were in our 20s, right? We've lived more life, we've seen things, and to be able to understand, and I always use analogies with people, and it's oversimplified, but I've talked about this many times on this show, that we say God or source is, and I'm not disregarding God, but was a big lump of clay or Play-Doh. And he decided he was going to create this third dimension, Earth. So he's taken little bits of his clay and he's created everything. Now, everything would be separate from the mound of clay, but is it not all connected? It all came from the same mound. To try to explain to people, that's how we are on this planet. We really are all made of the same thing, all of us, whether we don't look the same or not.
A little bit of energy. We are all the same. We are all exactly the same. Exactly. And we are all divine. Every one of us.
But not it's just hard when you get people that are like really awful to you or mean, really awful things, right? It's hard.
Your ego gets hurt and our ego gets angry. But as Jung said, you know, we have our ego self, but we have our million-year-old eternal self, our number 2. And that, the soul part, never gets hurt or angry. But if we're too attached to our ego, which most of us are because we walk around here and we believe it's all real, we do get hurt until we stop and we say, that's just my ego. Like my daughter's boyfriend just told me tonight, oh, I spent 5.5 hours being interviewed by all these people at Amazon. And then today they told me they don't want me. And I said, well, that's just your ego that's hurt. If you were supposed to work there, you have a job, stay where you are now, you would have gotten the job. Let it go. You have to let it go and think your eternal aspect doesn't give a damn about whether you get a job now.
No.
Only yourself, your ego that thinks, oh, that'd be cool to work there, you know. But we have to talk to ourselves and remind ourselves what's important.
I had a good mentor, and actually, before I say this, Zsun Dragon or Kevin says, I like that judgment view, Susan.
Thank you.
And I had a mentor when I took my Akashic Records practitioner courses, and I loved what she said. And because you learn in this field, especially in the quote unquote light worker field, you must banish the ego. You must get rid of the ego. You can't get rid of the ego. The ego
No.
is part of who you are.
The
It all,
ego is God too.
it can help keep you safe, but what she taught us to do, and I love it, is to make friends with your ego. So,
Yeah.
for example, going into the Akashic records, that you within the headspace of your mind space, invite the ego to come along and be a curious bystander, basically assuring that if I really need you, you're right there, but I just want you to watch, kind of thing, and have that kind of that simplistic conversation, but it's still there because there's no way that you can separate the ego as much as
No,
people want to. You
we
can't.
are two. We are two. The
Mhm.
other thing, the
That's
other
why you like Jungian theories.
I do. I do. I do because of the whole concept of the self, the eternal peace, and the ego. But another thing that I say to myself when I think, oh, why am I so hurt by that, or why am I so like judgmental? Because of my ego, and then I say, but don't beat up on your ego, because your ego sacrifices itself to play the role of the bad guy in a way, who who always seems to be like causing trouble, and it's the ego that's arrogant and pretentious and all that, but
But the ego keeps you safe too.
it
That's
keeps you safe. It keeps you from getting hit by a car when you cross the road. It kind of runs things in that way. But if you see that it sacrifices itself and plays that role, and it is part of the whole too, part
Mhm.
of the divine too. Kind
That's
of
why I always say embrace it all. Embrace it all. The everything, the
yeah.
past, the present, the future, everything you've lived through, the ego, whatever it may be, because that's what makes you you and you unique. And it does.
It's a complicated thing we're engaged in here.
Hmm.
Because I think when we're pure consciousness, without a body, I wonder, I mean, I don't know the answer to this. If we still have an ego when we're pure consciousness, when we go to the life between life place, which we can all do. I mean, there's a whole institute to travel to the life between life place, and a whole protocol started by this guy, this psychologist, Michael Newton. You may have heard of him.
I
He's,
may not.
he's he's dead now, but people he was treating people who were going through past life regression work, and suddenly they started going to the life between life place. And when I heard about that, I wanted to go to the life between life place because I wanted to visit my sister after she died. So I went and learned to do it too. And I can tell you that life between life place, well, first of all, the way that they do it is 8 hours, 4 hours practicing, and then 4 hours you do it. You go to your last death
Yep.
and you piggyback on that death over to the life between life. So it involves a lot of consciousness work. And
Right.
then when you're there, oh my God, you are so blissed out. Like you never want to come back
It
because,
sounds almost like a near death experience.
well,
And
it is kind of a death experience. You go over and everything is mental telepathy. You
Mhm.
know everything. Words are so clumsy compared to continual mental telepathy. I knew my body was laying on a chaise and it was weeping, but I wasn't even consider caring about it, and didn't ever care if I saw it again because I was so happy in this
and
space.
love. And love. There's no
And
word
love
in
and
the
love.
love. Hmm.
Yeah. So once you've done that, nobody needs to be afraid to die because we're going to the life between life space. We're going to communicate through mental telepathy with anyone we want to see that's over there. And not only that, a part of us is always there. So a part of every being on earth is always there because we don't bring our whole consciousness
I'm
into
so glad you said this
a
because
human
you
body.
were talking about your teachers, and this is something else as a spiritual teacher and mentor. I teach people. You can set up, as I call it collectively, spirit, if you will, and spirit will show up and you can learn about all kinds of things. They will come and teach you during the dream space if that's easier for you.
Yeah.
And exactly some of the things you are saying, right? And the reason when you said about the ego, and again, I don't have all the answers, but to me, when you're in a place, I always try to explain it to people like this. When we're looking at things and the ego is involved, we'll say, I say we're looking at things with our human eyes. But when we go back home, especially work as a medium, and somebody will say, is so and so angry with me because I wasn't there, or we ended on bad terms. And the way Spirit shown me, when you're in a space of pure love and there's nothing else but love, there isn't a need for ego because it doesn't fit the vibration.
Nobody's angry.
Mm-hmm. Or hateful or anything. There's no judgment. It's nothing but love. So there's no space because for an ego, because you don't have fear. You don't have all these things you would have on the earthly plane. Does that make sense?
Yes, because we suffer so much here.
Mm-hmm.
We all think, we're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not beautiful enough. We're not rich enough. I don't know. We don't write well enough. Whatever our thing is, we all have these stupid ideas. They're all just ego. So you get really free of them in that life between life space because it's not about that stuff. It's about love.
Plus, I always say we become our true whole self.
Yeah.
We drop the ego, we drop the fet, if you will. I was going to say family. I don't know why. I don't mean family. I mean our body, right? And so the ego goes, the human eyes go, if you will. And we actually become who we truly, truly are. It's almost like we're stuffed into this. Well, the way it's explained to me, and it makes sense. And I can remember bits and pieces as a toddler having an NDE. But we, as I understand it, there is a lineup of souls to come here because we come in with spiritual amnesia. We get shoved into these dense, heavy, clumsy bodies. Like you said earlier in the show about babies learning how to use the body, right? And you even hear about people that some people can remember being in the womb as well as the process, or you can go back to it with regression. And it's incredible to hear people's stories of what comes out of that.
Yeah. And speaking of human eyes, you don't need eyes to see. I mean, you need eyes to see this reality, but like if you do astral travel and you wake up out of the body and you then see your body lying on the bed, well, the eyes are in the body that's lying on the bed. So what are you seeing with? Your consciousness. Pure consciousness sees. You don't need eyes to see.
And you're not limited. You're not limited either, though.
Exactly. That is one of the weirdest things, and it freaks people out. My daughter came into my room a couple years ago when she was in her 20s, and she said, "I'm scared." I said, "What's the matter?" She said, I thought I was dreaming, but now I think it was something else." And we were in New York when she told me this. She said, "I was on an island in the Mediterranean in a cabana, and I was trying to get out of the cabana. And I think I was locked in. And then I woke up." The dog is walking around behind me.
Okay.
My Labrador retriever looking for food. She said, and then I woke up and I was standing, rattling my closet door.
Ooh.
And my body was on my bed.
Oh, you got it. I know that was some of the points Gavin wrote about. So please tell more. What do you think happened? Why do you think this happened?
What happened was she, first she said, I didn't know what was happening, but I looked across the room and the first thing I saw was the little green light where the charge goes into my computer. Okay. And then I thought, oh, so I must be in my room. I thought I was in the Mediterranean. And then she looked over and there was her body on the bed.
That's kind of.
And then the minute you see that, you slam back in.
I was just going to ask you, did she just snap right back in the minute she saw it?
And then she woke up and she came in and she said, "Mom, I can see without my body. I don't know what happened. Was it a dream? Because I really was not in my body. I was really in the Mediterranean Sea on an island."
Yeah.
I was like, yes, you were. Your body wasn't with you, but your consciousness was there, and your consciousness sees.
Mm-hmm.
And then your consciousness saw the green light and your body.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it frightened her. And then it happened several more times that she knew what it was. And we once we understand that our consciousness does not need a body,
Mm-hmm.
and you were conscious before you had a body. You were
Mm-hmm.
conscious when you were building the baby's body, when you were working with the mother's body to craft the baby and person you would be. You were just pure conscious. And then when we die, we're consciousness again, because we don't take this with us.
No.
We don't need this.
We had quite the conversations this weekend. Like I said, we have a neighbor that got, and we love all our neighbors so much. I left my old house from it being extremely haunted, lost everything. And we moved we're in a townhouse here. And my neighbors were even affected by the energy and the activity. It was awful in the previous home. And here, everybody's gotten to know everybody. It's like a family. Nobody bugs anybody. We mind your own business. But you ever need anything, you could go knock on anybody's door and they'd help you. And one of them got sick probably about 11 weeks ago, and she's palliative, and it's happening very, very, very quickly. So we had a lot of conversations, my partner and I, this weekend. And because of, again, he's very intuitive, but by choice, I think chooses not to tap into that, his choice. But talking about what happens after you die, and this person that he's very, very connected to, and how much he misses this person. And he said, I talk to them every day, but like we were saying again earlier, and your dad shared with you, they're not gone. And people try to understand, because they think heaven's way up here, and how do they come from way up here and come back down here? Does this mean they haven't crossed over? And all these thoughts. But again, we're looking at it with human. It's the only way I can explain it. I don't know if there's a better phrase, but I always say we're using our human eyes rather than. And I can remember what you said too. I think that's important to remind people that our consciousness can see, and it doesn't have eyes, so we can see.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's
because
important.
when you see things as a medium, a psychic, and intuitive, you're not using your human eyes.
Oh God, no.
But you're seeing things. So consciousness sees. We rely on the human eyes in this dimension, and it's so powerful the way we're designed with these senses. They glue us, they fix us in this reality.
Mm-hmm.
But I love to share this thought, which I read from some physicist, I think somewhere, that if there was no human on Earth, not even one human being, none of what we see would exist, because our cats and dogs see a slightly different version, and dragonflies have 50,000 eyes. They see it. Even a human fly. I mean, not a human fly, but a fly.
A fly in the human world.
In the human world. That's what I'm trying to say. They don't see this reality. Horses don't see this. Reality is species specific.
Mm-hmm.
It depends who's looking. And I think that's the most fascinating thought, that we are crafting what we see because of the structure of our eye. And a different kind of eye sees a different reality. So therefore, what is reality? It is all constructed.
Did you just hear that? Did you just hear that?
What?
You didn't hear that noise?
I heard something, but I don't know what
Didn't
it was.
it almost, I'm going to sound crazy. It literally sounded like an angel's, like it was like a note that went through.
I heard a note, but I couldn't make a word.
Oh my gosh, I'm covered in goosebumps. Sometimes I call it, EVPs, but I've never had anything like that. Did you guys hear it in the chat? Let us know if you did. I am literally covered in goosebumps.
I heard it, but I'm always looking for the word, I guess, being a writer, but it was like a swoop or something.
Okay, so that's exactly what Kevin said. I heard a sweeping noise.
Yeah,
and he says yes, he heard it. I don't know how. I just heard. I didn't
mean saying yes. That's right. We're perceiving what we imagine, or what our senses, they're trying to say, yeah, maybe you guys understand something. Bravo.
I love it. Julie heard it
Oh,
too.
like a whoosh. Yeah.
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 So, well, we'll have to mark that. What time is it? See, you know how fast I knew this was going to go fast. I still remember when you came on here when I was just starting out, and I knew we were going to have a fantastic conversation. It is already past 7:15. That's how fast it's gone by already. I wanted to ask you a few things that were in here from your book. So, this was interesting to me. It says, Kevin, you'd written, or I should say, Gavin sent me this about your book. When you lived in Berkeley, you had a healing at the Berkeley Psychic Institute during which you came under psychic attack. What happened?
What happened was, I'd been walking down the street in Berkeley, and I saw a sign for the Psychic Institute. I was 29 at the time that this happened. And I went in and I made an appointment. And then the next week I went to my appointment. They showed me in, they took me upstairs. At that time, the Berkeley Psychic Institute was a great big 3-story house with a wraparound porch. It must be much bigger today because people go there to train. But at that point, it was wonderful, but approachable. And I was sitting across from a psychic, and she was telling me how open my chakras were, each one at birth, and how open they were now. And then when she got to my solar plexus, she said, there's a hook in your, a cord in your solar plexus. Someone's draining your energy. Some spirit or being is draining your energy. And she said, we can't, let's investigate if we can remove this. And she said, your higher self made this agreement. So you have to seek permission of your higher self for us to remove this cord. So I went into a light trance, and I asked my higher self, who I call Sonam. She told me that was her name. When I was on the other side. And she said, yes, I give you my permission. And so I told the psychic, and then the house started shaking. The whole building was shaking. So I looked up, I looked down, I said, is this house rocking? And at that moment, 2 older psychics came in, a man and a woman, and they sat on either side of her. The 3 of them were then facing me, and they concentrated to stabilize. I thought they were stabilizing the house. What they were doing was sealing it to drive off the entity. So then they said, you need to trace this cord back to find this where
it came from.
So I again went into the light meditation, and I got a vision of myself on another planet, with a slightly different body, but I knew it to be me. And I was boarding a cigar-shaped spaceship with a line of people. And I saw my current partner, the partner I had at Berkeley. He was not getting on the spaceship. He was looking at us, and I turned and I was walking backwards onto the spaceship, keeping eye contact with him. And then I realized he put the cord in that dimension, in that life. So they didn't want to cut it. They wanted to dissolve it.
Interesting. Did they say why?
They just said they thought that would be a better thing to just dissolve it. Because some people cut, they pull out, but they were dissolving it. And then I was like, oh, right, now I got to go home, and I'm living with him, and the cord is out. And that's when I decided I thought I would return to New York and leave him in Berkeley. And that's what I did. I came back to New York, and I started graduate school to become a psychologist. So
I could see why. And it's interesting that you felt that pull and you went there, and this sounds like, oh, I was getting so much information as you were explaining this, and what I'm seeing is that, dissolving a cord versus cutting it, because I'm thinking with cutting it, and especially on another planet, if you will, another realm, I literally kept feeling like he was much more evolved and had a lot more knowledge and to manipulate energy, whatever it might be, right?
Yes.
That cord. So I literally could see when I asked you that question that had they cut it, he had the ability energetically from that realm to just continue it. Dissolving it literally got rid of the roots and everything. There was no way. Am I on the right path? Or
they said he's a very powerful being and he's not from here.
Yeah.
And he was fascinating. Oh my God, sex with that man.
I wanted to ask you about that.
It was
like
about
your experience with him.
Into the hard drive of the universe. I mean, of course, I was in my 20s, but he was already then in his 40s.
Didn't he see another face on you, though, or something? I remember.
Oh, that was the person after him.
Oh, okay. So what happened with that?
I'll tell you what happened with that. Anyway, what they said in the Berkeley, just to finish it, that he was very powerful.
That's what I was feeling as you were telling me this. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet.
Yeah, much more powerful than me, but he was stuck at some level. That's why he put the cord, even though he was more powerful. Anyway, so then I leave him. I come back to New York. I start graduate school to become a psychologist.
Right.
I'm at that point 30 years old. Graduate school takes 9 years before I actually become a psychologist. Okay. But in the early part of graduate school, I went to the Bottom Line to hear this group play. Because a friend of mine took me there. My friend Maggie took me there. But I had met this guy anyway, helping a friend move, who was a musician. And he had a mohawk, and he was just like, it was...
He was a cool bad boy.
He was a cool bad boy. So... Yeah. But I mean, he was a cool bad boy, but he was also a really beautiful soul. So anyway, we move in together 6 weeks later or something. When you're young, you just move in with whoever you're with. And
that's how you experience life. It doesn't matter how old you are. If it feels right, you go for it.
Anyway, and in the beginning of a relationship, you have a lot of sex because it's brand new. Yeah, so he was one night we were making love, and he's looking at me with some kind of weird face, but I notice it, but I don't want to ask.
Not in the moment.
Not in the moment. So the next night I'm coming home. I go to school. He writes songs all day. He was writing jingles and music. Mm-hmm. I come home, and back then he had a handheld tape recorder. Now it would be different, but he was singing a song that he had just written called The Girl with the Golden Eyes. And I was like, oh, that's a weird, what are you writing about? And he said, well, when we're making love, you don't look like you. You look sort of like you. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I have brown eyes. Mm-hmm. He said, well, your eyes turn light gold. Your face looks a slightly different shape. Your neck looks a little longer. I was like, you're kidding me. He said, no, I swear. I said, true. So I go right away to an intuitive, a medium, and I say, what is going on? And she says, you were together on Atlantis. When you make love, you appear to him in your Atlantean body.
Ah, that makes total sense.
But I didn't realize it, because I was just so involved with feeling all the sexual energy. I had no idea that my eyes changed color, my neck elongated, my face, none of it. And that didn't happen with every person I made. Like, it didn't happen with the guy from the other planet. That sex was like,
You had to have some magical thing, though, to have that kind of, when you have that.
Yeah,
kind of, I'm never embarrassed to talk about sex either, because, there's so much when it has to do, even in the magical world, the energetic world, there's so much behind that. So when you run into something like that it's earth shaking, there's usually a lot more behind that.
Maybe
Energetic body.
It had to do with the cord. Who knows? I don't know what it had to do with. But anyway, this sex was just beautiful sex. It was just like I loved him and he loved me, and we recognized each other, and and I believe that was probably true, that was my Atlantean.
He didn't appear to you that way, though. Isn't that interesting? Maybe men are more visual. I don't know, or
I don't know why he didn't appear to me that way, because I was looking at him.
Well, you would have had to have been for him to be looking at you and seeing
exactly. I was looking at him, and he looked just like he normally did. Maybe that was just a special treat my soul did for him.
Oh, maybe part of the process.
Did not know anything about it.
Part of the process, right?
Maybe.
Like you guys, you were, like you said, you were both in love with each other, and men are more visual than women per se, right? So maybe that was just something else that,
or maybe that was a gift my soul gave him, and my current personality, Susan, didn't know anything about it, but my soul was like, here, I'm going to do this for you.
I think it's cool.
It was cool. It was very cool.
So there's also a part, it says the raw material and so raw meaning for people listening, RA, and the law of one have been important to your understanding of what we're all doing here in the third dimension. Ra claims to have created one of the pyramids using thought alone. So who is Ra, not rot, Ra, and how did he do it? That's what I was trying to say. How did
Ra, this won't make any sense, but I'll tell you what Ra says Ra is. Ra is a six-dimensional memory complex, which is a group in the higher dimensions. I think it's like a group consciousness. And in the 1980s, the early 1980s, Ra was channeled by Carla Ruckert. And Dawn Elkins was the scientist who was asking the questions, because she wasn't awake when she was channeling, because he was using her body and her voice. And there are videos of this, actually, that one can see. And Don would ask, I don't know if Don was a physicist or he was some kind of scientist, and he would ask Ra the questions, and Ra would use Carla's voice and they would, on a reel-to-reel, because it was 1980, reel-to-reel tapes, tape it all. And then they transcribed it into books, which are called the Ra material, which you can get on Amazon. And Don was asking all kinds of questions about Earth and life on Earth and people on Earth. And one of the things he asked about was the pyramids. And there are those three great pyramids outside of Cairo. There are many other pyramids under the ocean and in different places in South America, but
they're all over.
Yeah, but he was specifically asking about the Egyptian ones. And Ra said that 11,000 years ago, Ra, using thought, created the largest pyramid, so that is not made of anything from Earth.
Wow.
It is made from his thought, materialized as that pyramid. The other two pyramids were made from things on Earth, but moved with the mind. The stones were moved with the mind. But the big one was not made of anything from Earth. It was made from Ra's thought.
That is just mind-blowing to me, because I've always known Ra as being one of the sun gods. May not be talking about the same one, I'm not sure.
I wondered that myself. Ra says that he evolved, his group, evolved on Venus in the sixth dimension. We only know Venus in the third dimension because we're in the where the atmosphere is sulfuric acid. But Venus, like Earth, simultaneously exists in every dimension. And Ra lived on Venus when Venus was in the sixth dimension. And Ra, it was the 6-dimensional beings are very powerful.
Just for a minute here, we're going to delete this and put someone in timeout. Sorry, we're flushing the toilet right now. Thanks. Sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, there's a lot of wonderful information, but one of the things Don Elkins asked Ra was, why is there evil here on Earth, and what is going on? And Ra said, human beings have free will.
Mm-hmm.
Some beings love the dark, and some beings love the light.
Mm-hmm.
And you can serve the Creator on either path.
That is interesting.
Up to a certain level. Once you get beyond the high 6th dimension, everyone must jump to the light. Everyone must jump to the light. So we're in the 3rd dimension. We have all this duality, rich and poor, high and low, old and young, dark and light, good and evil, because this is what the laws are in our thing. And I think that it continues in the 4th and 5th and the lower 6th. Ra did not know what was beyond the higher 6th because Ra was at the 6th dimension. But he was talking about the organization of the universe or existence as he knew it, that we are all in one consciousness. Ross, that's why it's called the law of one, because we are all one. We
And
are
that makes
all
sense.
the same energy. We are all in the same field. The number of minds in the universe, physicists tell us, quantum physicists tell us, is one mind. We're all in it. We're all differentiated out of one mind. All our little consciousnesses come from one mind. And Ross said, you can have free will up into the high 6th dimension to you advance on the negative path, the dark path, by service only to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Stealing, cheating, lying, taking everything you want, limiting the other person's power.
Mm-hmm.
Taking power over another person is how you advance. The ultimate power to take over another person is to take their life.
Yes.
So that's how you advance on if you are one who loves the dark. If you are Genghis Khan, for example, if you are one who loves the light, you advance by service to others.
Mm-hmm.
You gain polarity and go higher dimension by service to others, whatever that could be.
Mm-hmm.
However, whatever service you add, whether you're serving dinners or nursing or doctoring or teaching or cleaning someone's house or creating a cure for a disease, all these things are service. So we have that choice.
My mind is just going in circles because again, getting a lot of stuff from spirit, I've always been told that one is not better than the other, either service to self or service to others, but it's encouraged to gravitate towards love, obviously, right? So where I wrap my mind about this, and I always, in the beginning, when I went through, I have worked with people that have had horrible, horrible, horrible attachments. One case, levitating on camera, literally thinking about it afterwards a couple hours later, and I didn't know what I know now. And I'm not a religious person. I say I'm a recovering Catholic. And so what I was sitting there thinking the Our Father a couple of hours later, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Like, this person, one of the most beautiful people you'd ever meet, like a very loving heart, but had this evil attachment, could not say the word God, angel, Jesus, anything to do with positivity and a bit of a, like angel, anything like that. There's much more to the story. And she was an incredible mother, loved animals, rescued them. I watched this person hurt her child. He was an adult child, just with a look. He was rolling, I swear on my children's head, rolling on the ground, screaming, holding his stomach. The dogs, two little dogs, were yelping. just with one look. And when you looked in the eyes, I literally said, God, I never, ever, ever want to look into something with that kind of evil ever again. And this person levitated on camera. It was just so terrifying. And that time, this was my old house way back quite a few years ago. And I tried to find somebody that was awake or, this was 3 o'clock in the morning for me. This person lived in another country. And I found someone. And I was grateful they didn't see the levitation, but they saw everything else and they weren't really able to help. So I got off the phone and I'm sitting there and it's about 5 o'clock and it was about 4:30 in the morning. And I get a message on an instant message app and it says, it's time. By this time I was angry because of what was being done to this person. So all I wrote back, for what? And nothing came. And then literally it was about 5:30 in the morning. And I remember praying in my head, the Our Father. I literally got a message almost within 10-15 seconds. Cut that SHIT out. I know exactly what you're doing and blah, blah. It just blew my mind. So here we are talking about, like, that's where my mind goes with this about the dark, because I've seen a lot of the dark. And I remember going to my Akashic Records practitioner after this. I was in the course still and asked her, why am I seeing all these dark things? Whereas I only always ever wanted to work in the light. And she did help me make sense of it without trying to pull ego in it. She just said, sometimes when there's darkness, which we have light and dark, the light is needed to be shone in the dark area. And she said that was sort of some of my work. So this is fascinating that you're sharing what
light
Ross.
in the dark. You're finding the light in the dark. We don't defeat the dark. Find the light in the dark, because even the dark is the divine.
Well, it has
It's
to come from somewhere.
differentiated out of the divine, and it's tolerated. All things are tolerated.
That's hard for people. Go ahead.
There is free will in this dimension. All things are tolerated until the higher sixth dimension, and then to go all the way back, everyone has to jump onto the path of light.
It makes sense, right? Because the way I've always been shown is like attracts like energy. And as we go higher up in the dimensions, the energy, the frequency, the vibration becomes higher. And it's almost like you're no longer a match. After maybe at the sixth dimension, you're no longer a match for it. So it really can't even exist for them.
Yeah.
Wow. But you're giving me so much to think about.
Yeah, you already know everything I'm saying, so I'm not telling you.
I understand it, but and even my co-host had said this, and it was really profound to me, because we do judge and we do label, and it's true as human beings, right? We name things, we label them, and he had said, what was it? How he had said it? He had said, like, something that we as human beings may look at it and say that's evil, but say it's an entity, or say it's an extraterrestrial, say it's whatever, not of this world. What if they were back on their planet or their place, wherever they are, that it's perfectly acceptable to do that, in the way that evil is sort of in the eye of the beholder, depending on what you're dealing with and where it comes from. It made sense to me.
Right? And also, if everything is part of the oneness, then everything is part of source, and every kind of anything can differentiate out of it. And
it makes sense.
Yeah, we do have free will. And like Ross said, some love the light and some love the dark.
And some walk in the middle. I have seen some that work with both.
I think so too. And that's you can fool around there or whatever you want up until the high sixth dimension, because there have been dark beings on Earth.
There are. I've run into them.
Yeah. But I mean, even when you look at history, like Ra gave the example of Genghis Khan as a person who was, he killed so many people.
Yes.
Probably a Stalin. They take so much power. Killing other beings advances you on the dark path.
But then it makes you think too, right? Then you get into the question of, because I don't judge people that use religion, right? Or need religion. It's always whatever gets you on the path that you're meant to be on, helps you feel closer. For me, it's God. It could be universe, could be source, could be whatever people want to call it. But we tend to look at it too, because I think of religious dogma and our judicial system, right? That evil is punished. There's a punishment for it. So
that's our third dimensional.
But where I was going to go with that is, I've heard people say, then what's the impetus for remaining to be a good law-abiding citizen and to treat others with respect and love?
Right.
It's kind of it's not my question.
In our dimension, we do have that system of punishment and laws. But I think
when we leave, right? That's what they were talking. Like when we cease to exist on this planet, for example, but our consciousness is still there, but we gravitated towards the dark, possibly the ultimate darkness, like you said, to take a life. And there's nothing happens to somebody for that, right?
Right. I think because it's legal. I mean, legal isn't the right word, but
I hear you.
It's part of the design that this can be done. You see a lot of discussion of this in the raw material because there were higher dark entities who did not want raw giving this information to humans through Carla and Don and this Jim who was running the tape recorder. So a fifth dimensional entity tried to kill Carla.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Did not succeed in killing Carla, but did succeed in killing Don, and that stopped the recordings.
Oh my goodness.
Because this fifth dimensional entity drove him crazy and he shot himself.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
This is a scientist, but there was still 2.5 years worth of recording because they were looking for ways to get into this dimension. And Ra warned them. Ra was a sixth dimensional being. He told them that they were under attack and that this was a very brave thing to do, to bring this information. But
I'm going to be reading more in this because I've heard of Ra. I have actually had a client, and they didn't want to tell me because they thought I would think they were crazy. Most people think what we're talking about, right? They don't want to tell anybody because I don't want you to think I'm crazy. They believe in one of their lifetimes that they were part of the Ra collective or Ra themselves.
Yeah, they may have been and decided.
That's what I told them. Yes.
Yeah, they could have certainly been. I mean, in the 60s, we had Seth.
I heard of that.
Jane Roberts. And he's the first channel that I was reading about as I was starting to see channels as a late teen, early 20s. And he was fifth dimensional. And he described a slightly different, he described a lot of things. But Ra was a sixth dimensional being. And so he had more information.
Absolutely.
Which was very interesting. But they both contributed. Ra had never been a human. Seth had been a human a long time ago and was able to be channeled through Jane Roberts because they had lifetimes together, apparently.
Did Ra say why he decided to create the Great Pyramid?
Yes, there's quite a bit about it in the raw material.
Okay.
It was to help people raise their vibrations. And at the time the pyramids were created, they were aligned with certain...
They are, yeah.
whether certain stars or certain planets.
Constellations.
It's off now. Ra said they can't be used for that anymore because the alignment has shifted. But yes, there were chambers for raising your vibration. They were as an educational tool is what they were for. And they were aligned with certain heavenly bodies.
Because you just know that they weren't created with human hands. I don't care what
you're so fascinated by them. We're so fascinated by them.
So Kevin is saying this is so fascinating, Susan. And Kasoon is here. He's over in Sri Lanka, and it's early morning there. So I'm so grateful when he comes in. I forgot to say hi to Juliet Evans. She was here from the UK earlier, and it's late over there as well. So Kasoon is asking, is this Ra the husband of Isis?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think he is. You said he was never a human, right?
He was never a human. So
not that Isis was human. She was a goddess.
Yeah. I don't know about that Egyptian cosmology, but Ra was definitely focused a lot 11,000 years ago on Egypt. So I've wondered that too, because the god Ra and all of that. I don't know. I don't think that was in the raw material, but
I'm always fascinated by channeling anyways. And I do automatic writing and things like that. But I know, and it's fear, honestly, to not let myself go into a trance to do something like that. And I keep going back to my experiences in the previous home and what I was dealing with. But I also know, had I not had those experiences, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So I'm working on conquering that fear, because I am fascinated by people that channel. Fascinated.
Yeah, I am too. And I also block a lot. I will receive information by mental telepathy.
Always,
that, and I take it, and that's where my books come from. Not this, but the trilogy. This is my story. All my.
I love that you got exercises after every
how to do things. But several of my teachers have said, why don't you just do channel? And I said, because I don't want to do that, because I'm afraid to do that. And I'm happy to get the downloads in the dreams. I get enough information there. And I mean, even sometimes I can, if I'm writing, they're channeling directly to me, and I'll write a word, they'll change the word. They're just telling me what to write. And sometimes I look up and I think the writing is in the air. It's just in the air, and I'm just typing. So
no, I hear you. Or when you were talking about consciousness can see, and I've been noticing this lately, when I'm doing something, it's literally like my eyes are getting in the way. Like I will close my eyes, and it could be something mundane that I'm working on. I don't know what it is, but I've really been taking note of. Maybe I was meant to hear that consciousness can see, but I can literally perform it, but obviously not driving or something. But like whatever it is, it takes a bit of concentration and working. I find that if I remove and I don't do it on purpose, it just sort of happens that I'll close my eyes, and it's like, yeah, I can do this 10 times faster without watching with my eyes. It's so weird.
And especially if you want to recall a memory or something, you just close your eyes. You're right back there. You see everything. You see everything just as it was, because your consciousness went back there.
But even as a psychologist, I'm sure you learned this too, that the mind doesn't recognize in the fact that if you go to, say, even trauma or a traumatic memory and you start to go through it, especially with the eyes closed, the body will actually create the same physiological stress chemicals and as if you were actually going through it, right?
So you have to be careful. You have to be careful what you think at all times. You have to be careful where you put your consciousness, because literally you can put your consciousness anywhere you want. And when you sleep, every night your consciousness leaves your body. You dream you're on another planet, your consciousness is on the other planet. You dream you're in an island on the Mediterranean, your consciousness is there. The body obviously isn't at the moon or in the Mediterranean, but the consciousness really is. Shut your eyes and think of something, imagine it, and you're there. You're there.
You are absolutely.
Because we are consciousness. That is what we are. Our ultimate reality is consciousness.
Kevin says, I can relate, Susan, about writing. When I write about my guides, I get that quote unquote help with the words change too. Meditation comes to mind as well. He says he agrees on everything you are saying.
Thank you. I'm glad that we.
This was gonna fly by. We got a few more minutes, only I told you it's gonna.
Yeah.
So, do you have any other? I know you've got many experiences in this new book, but is there one maybe that we haven't talked about that you want to maybe share that people? Because I want people to read your book.
Let's see. I think we shared.
We talked about a lot.
Yeah, we talked about a lot. I did have one interesting one with a patient.
Okay.
Who came to me because she was an event planner. This was about 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. She was an event planner. Or no, it wasn't 25 years ago because my daughter was a toddler. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it must have been because my daughter's 30. Well, it was whenever.
It was at that age, right? My eldest is going to be 30 in July.
Yeah. She came to me because she suddenly developed fear of flying after flying all over the world for years as an event planner. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not usually the way the onset of a fear comes. Mm-hmm. So I immediately said, before we begin, this is unusual. I just want you to go to this psychic I know in the West Village and find out if this is about a premonition or something. No, I don't believe in psychics. I'm not going. Okay. So we start working. I see her once a week for a few times. I'm sitting in my office after she leaves, and suddenly I'm sitting in my chair and I can't remember what's outside my office door. All I can see is a black ocean. And I'm like, what is, and I wouldn't get up and go look and see what was there until I forced myself to remember that it is not an ocean. It is a hallway, which leads to a closet and a door and the exit to the waiting room. Okay. So she comes in the next week. She says, I have to go to Zurich for an event, but my stomach is, and I'm like, cancel it. Don't go. We haven't cracked this. Do not go. No, I'm going to go. I'm going to be fine. So she goes, she gets on the plane. The night the plane takes off, I have the following dream. I'm in a light body and I'm above the ocean. And all these light beings are drifting up and I'm looking for her. Oh, and I see her and I go to try to grab her. And a gate, like an energy gate, knocks me back. Wow. I wake up. I don't go back to sleep. The next morning, my then husband brings in the New York Times on the front page. Flight to Zurich crashed over the Atlantic Ocean. No survivors.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's what it was about for her. And so then I go to the psychic in the West Village and say, why? And her name was Alexandra. She's now deceased too. She said, everybody on that plane, including the children, because children are often teachers.
They are. Mm-hmm.
They had an agreement to die on that plane for their own reasons. In the case of your patient, she was helping her family her soul, to try to become more loving, more spiritual, bringing them together through her death. Wow.
Subsequently, I'm hoping you weren't going to say it was going to crash.
Half of her family then came in to tell me how she'd visited them, how they could feel her hand on their shoulder. So that was an unusual experience. The dream was a very unusual experience, that I actually saw all the people on that flight up above and that I had the premonition of the ocean outside my door.
Absolutely.
So all that was a strange time.
That would shake me. Would shake me, definitely. We are out of time. I want to tell you, though, Kevin just put down Aziz and Dragon. Amazing show and guest tonight, Lorilei. Please have Susan back again.
Anytime.
I can't believe, as soon as I saw your name, and I remembered when you were on the show before, because we always have these discussions. Where can
Well,
people find you? What do you got
they
coming up?
can, well, I have a website. It's called my name, Susan Plunket with one T,
Mhm,
.com. It's Plunket, one T.com. And my books are listed on it. And
mhm.
I guess that's all. And all my books are on Amazon.
Yes.
Or you can get them through the publisher, but you can just get them on Amazon. I don't know how to work this thing to make it. This is the book that we've been talking about tonight, A Jungian Understanding of Transcendent Experiences. Transcendent is like a really wonderful feeling paranormal experience.
I'm glad you said that because that was one of the things on here we didn't get
Yeah.
to and so I think we did cover. I don't usually use his notes that he sends, and Gavin, if you're listening, it's not that I don't appreciate them, I do, but I'm just one of these curious people, and I just go like, what do you mean by that, and where do you go,
Yeah.
and I got to hear
He
it
must
all.
be sleeping by now in Wales. It's the middle of the night.
Well, I don't know, I think he's a night person. I know I am. I'm
Yeah.
going to bed early. For me, it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Uh,
And then I'm up at like 7. I don't sleep a lot. But anyways, I want to wish everybody, including yourself, happy Thanksgiving for those that are
yes.
celebrating in the US.
Yes.
Canada's already had it, but happy Thanksgiving. And I want to thank everybody that was here today. Julie's just saying great show. We didn't have our whole usual crew that we usually do here, but a lot of people popped in because I know they'll be watching on the replay though. So because I know I'm going to hear more saying please have you back, and I know when I have a good guest, you were a fantastic guest. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It was awesome, and I want to tell
You
you.
have a happy Thanksgiving too.
Okay, well, thank you. We had Thanksgiving in October.
Oh.
We should have it the same times as our brothers and sisters in the US because they're already, not that Thanksgiving is
Where
anything.
are you? Are
I'm in
you in?
Canada.
Oh, you're in Canada. Oh,
Mhm. I'm in Thunder
lucky
Bay.
you. Oh,
Thunder Bay in northwestern Ontario. I'm about 35, 40 minutes away from the Minnesota border. And I am about 6.5 hours north of Minneapolis, Minnesota, if that
wow.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can picture right where it is.
There you go. So you guys, I'm trying to find my note on here. Give me one sec. I got to find it here. I wanted to tell you guys, I know who it is. Stay tuned, you guys, if you are enjoying listening to the programming, because we got the Light Gate coming up next with Dolly Saffron and with Preston Dennett. And so I hope you'll stay tuned. If you ever want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. As they say after every show or at the end, I'm working on a domain name website. When I get the course that I'm working on that I talked about earlier, sometime in the new year, I'm also going to be adding all my resin pieces and stuff I make. So it'll be all under one umbrella. So I always forget to tell you who the next guest is. Maybe I can find it as I'm wrong phone. See, I got all these devices while I'm producing, just in case one of them goes down. I can get right back on here. Who have we got? You know who we have coming on next week? I'm glad we checked. Miss Julie Jean Bassett, who is in the chat, animal communicator extraordinaire and incredible shamanic practitioner. So she will be on with me next week. Also, don't forget, I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, the Angel Rocker Tribe for more things spiritual. I also have the thing at the foot of the bed with David Hansel and Lorilei Potvin on Facebook. We are getting closer to 200, like Dave always says on our show on Thursday nights, 7 p.m. live here on UPRN, that when we get to 200, Dave and I are going to start going live in there from time to time. So I want to thank you all so much. Again, Susan, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
stay tuned for Dolly and Preston next. Okay, guys? See you on Thursday.